chickens back here,
so,
and a rooster that does not know how to do that.
So I just want to say welcome to everyone, and then I will want to have a look at your chickens. So welcome everyone to another interview with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce, at A Tippling Philosopher. I do appreciate you being here with us. Who are we? Well, you should know me by now if you are hanging out because you know this channel. That's obvious. But you might not know Casey Kendall, who is I'm really excited to have as my guest. He is an OnlySky contributor, newly arrived at OnlySky, the secular media platform that I'm writing for at the moment, and he will be a feature writer there as well. So that's fantastic. And he is joining me al fresco from across the pond. I know over here it's the hottest day in the year so far in the UK. Hello, Kendall, Casey. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the interview. And show me your chickens.
All right, back right over there.
Nice.
That's yeah. It was during the beginning of the pandemic. We went to the store and noticed that there were a lot of things that we couldn't get all the time, and eggs was one of them. So we thought, we live in a rural area, let's be chicken people. And so now I have chickens. And roosters don't just make that noise in the beginning of the day or at dawn. They do it all night long.
So here's the thing. Well, I wasn't expecting a chicken conversation, but hey,
no.
let's have one. I used to keep chickens in my last place, and I used to get the chicks from someone I knew whose parents ran a chicken farm, and so I used to get like a bunch of chicks, but none of us could sex them, so they're just like these are random. So I ended up having like three cockerels, right? And what happens when you got 3 cockerels, maybe about 6 hens, is that you have a lot of like bad behavior going on and a lot of non-consensual mating taking place. And so and the hens were getting like all the feathers plucked out the back of their necks. So I was like, right, I need to get rid of two of these cockerels. But I'm also, at the time, I'm a vegan now, but at the time I was like, right, I eat meat, but I was an ethical consumer. So I was like, right, I really want to do this properly. So if I eat meat, I want to know what it feels like to go through the process of killing an animal in order to understand that process to justify my meat eating. So I was like, I'm going to do this properly. I went to the butchers and said, right, how do I kill a chicken? How do I do it nicely? And they're like, well, you get its neck in between you, things like that, and you pull and twist, and job done. And then you pluck it, and then they told me how to pluck it and prepare it. So I did that. I'm sorry about this, Casey. I haven't given yourself.
No. I might need this information.
So what happened is I was like, right, I'm such an ethical consumer. I'm such a good moral human being. This is great. So I took the chicken and I broke its neck. And I don't know if you've seen Austin Powers, but there's a bit where like he presses a button, and I think it's Robert Wagner, is it? It goes, or no, it's Rob Lowe, I think. Goes down anyway into the vault below, and he's like supposed to be dead, and you can hear him go, "I'm still alive. Ow, this really hurts." So anyway, this chicken was like not dead, and it was like, here, look at me, how ethical I am, and I've like half killed the chicken, and it's just like going, this is really painful. And I was like, oh my god, what do I do now? So I got a broomstick, and I put its neck under the broomstick and stood on each side of the broomstick handle and pulled the chicken by its legs and pulled the head off the chicken. So here and then there was like a chicken neck and blood flying everywhere, and I was like, hey, look at me, I'm an ethical consumer, I'm such a nice guy, and I've just basically beheaded this half alive chicken, and it was just like the worst experience ever. And then
Jonathan, is that what made you a vegan?
it's like, now I can safely say no. What made me a vegan was getting multiple sclerosis. But it's an interesting story in itself that I wanted to be a vegan, but I was never morally strong enough to be one. And I wasn't one of these people that would go around justifying eating meat. It's just like, I am imperfect. I'm morally imperfect. I realize that eating meat is bad, but I just like it too much and all that. Anyway, that's my chicken story. Casey, welcome to the channel. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes. I am Robert Casey Kendall. I go by my middle name because my dad was also named Robert, and it was just less confusing having one in the house. I have since learned that is a curse that I have passed on to one of my sons, whose name is Robert Oliver. and goes by Ollie because I'm a comic book nerd and I like the Green Arrow. Also, my other son is named Alexander, and when his middle name is Alexander, and when he found out he shared a name with Lex Luthor, he said, "Great, I'm going to beat up Superman." And I said, "I don't think you're supposed to do that." And he said, "I'm going to punch him right in the penis." And I said, "You're definitely not supposed to do that." I'm a therapist. I'm a husband. I'm a dad of 5.
I think if that's the sort of thing your children are saying, I think you need to be a therapist.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
So, sorry, you're a therapist and a what was the last bit? I missed it.
Father of 5. Yeah.
And we'll
in writer talking... now. I can say writer.
Yeah,
comedian.
Yeah. So a bit of a lot of things there. So, and we'll hopefully touch on all of those things in due course. To start off, due to the fact that obviously this is my audience is predominantly atheistic or philosophical, whatnot. Would you like to just explain how, because you're an atheist, what was your upbringing like in terms of religion? Because, you know, the assumption is for so many people in America that you were brought up religious and then sort of ditch that religiosity, but obviously that's not for everyone. So what was your experience?
Went to church a few times as a kid. I want to say Presbyterian or Episcopalian, one of those two. I know it's one of those. Clearly didn't stick. I remember going to church and feeling bad when we didn't go to church. When you're little, you don't really have a lot of control over whether you're going or not. I just kind of knew that we eventually kind of faded out from the church. And I asked my mom recently, who's now an atheist as well, like why we stopped going. And she said that the last experience for her really was the church would always contact her asking for donations. And then when her parents passed away, nobody reached out to her. Nobody really touched base with her at all. And then like the following week, sent her another, gave her another call, like, "Hey, so, you know, we're looking for donations." And for her, that was kind of like, yeah, I wasn't really into it in the first place. And now I'm really done with it. For myself, I considered myself Christian until I was 23 or 24. Had a friend that had read The God Delusion, passed it on to everybody else in the friend group. I read it. I was like, well, this makes like a lot of sense. And it was already kind of confirming a lot of suspicions or things that I'd been thinking about. I took a critical thinking class as an undergrad, and that was really the critical thinking class was the final, like, okay, I think that I can just safely shelf this. I do.
Really? What was it about the critical thinking class? What were the particular mechanisms or
learning about logical fallacies?
Right.
Because I don't know what it's like in the land of having, you know, like healthcare and all that, but we weren't taught about that in grade school or in high school, and it wasn't until I was in college that I'd heard of like ad hominem, and I didn't know what that meant. And then when I learned about logical fallacies and I started reading up on them, then kind of every little holdout that I had where I was like, no, maybe this is still a thing, I would hold it up to a logical fallacy. I'd be like, nope, this doesn't make sense. And then kind of, you know, mentally went down my checklist, and every time I came into well, what about, then I'd find a pretty solid counter argument for it. And well, the example that the teacher used, I can remember, was she said that, and I don't know if this is true or not, but she said that nuns will bathe with their clothes on because they don't want God to see them naked. And I don't know if that's true or not, but she said, yeah, but then, you know, God can see through the ceiling and through the roof and through the rafters and the insulation and whatnot, but somehow stops at underwear. Like that was I think it was a special pleading or something. I can't remember which logical fallacy it was, but I remember thinking like, yeah, there's really not another, doesn't really hold up. So yeah, that was kind of the last
and I guess I wonder if, like, living in not a very strong religious family, perhaps as you were, if they were having issues with the church. I mean, this is the same for me, that my parents are nominally Christian. They still are. I think my mum says not anymore. My dad is like sort of the occasional midnight mass he'll turn up to. But it's like on a day-to-day basis, are you sitting there and praying to God? No, you're not. So you're only saying you're a Christian. You're not really.
Kind of, yeah.
But that meant that for me as a child growing up, I went off to boarding school. and I was able to find my own way in life without, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Well, for me, like the tree dropped me as an apple into a river, and I was literally on the other side of the world to my parents for a large proportion of my childhood, and that allowed me to become someone different from my parents in a way that, had I lived at home and had they been overtly religious as well, things would have been different. We are the products of our environment and our nature, right? So I wonder whether you, not having particularly strong Christian parents, allowed you to then, not be sucked into that whole world in a way that was particularly strong.
Yeah, and I do have friends now that did grow up incredibly religious, that once they left for college, I think that, based on like a lot of the podcasts and things that I read and all that is a pretty common experience and I've heard of religious families discouraging their kids from going to secular schools for continued education solely because, like, oh, this will really test your faith. You don't want to do that. But also, I kind of feel like if you should be welcoming that, if you're feeling that way, then why wouldn't you want it tested? And why wouldn't you want it to be like, no, let's see if I can take it,
It's such a good point. And you see this on these like American church boards that are outside. I don't know what you call them, those signs outside.
Billboards.
Like, those ones where they put the individual letters on, and they're like, don't send your child to college because it's the devil's zone or whatever. And you're thinking, would God make religion so counter intellectuals and counterintuitive that you would have to encourage your children not to get educated in order to maintain belief in it? What a weird, unintelligible scenario that is. And yet that's what seems to take place, which is, don't give your children education, or if you do give them education, make sure it's Liberty University or something like that. And it's a real problem. Doesn't make sense.
Definitely.
So you ended up, at the age of 24 saying, okay, I'm not religious anymore. And then, what's your life story until now? Kind of briefly, just as pertains to what we're going to be talking about.
As it pertains to being a godless heathen, went to kind of explored that. I did get to. I kind of bounced around with my friends, had a lot of philosophical discussions with them, swapped a bunch of books around. Didn't really, when I did stand up a lot in my 20s and in my early 30s, and kind of stepped away from that. And we might get into that a little bit later, but basically one of the reasons I stopped doing stand-up comedy is because I met my wife. She had 2 kids.
She already had 2 kids. Yeah.
She already had 2 kids. Yeah. And then I realized that if I wanted to be a stand-up comic, I had to be in bars 5 nights a week, but I also wanted to be a good dad, and doesn't necessarily mean I could be in bars 5 nights a week. So being a dad is a priority. So I still was looking for a way to be funny. Cause I needed that outlet. So
are you still looking, by the way?
Yeah. Still working on it.
So I'm someone I don't even know. So
no, please do. Please. I welcome it. Let me know when let me know when I'm warm. It takes me back to comedy days, really does. So I wrote, there was a local paper, I think I forgot to tell you about this earlier, but called the Vancouver Vector, where I had a little feature article. It was called The Road to Atheism, because I felt like, there is, as our community kind of grows and as more people have their input, it's kind of hard to find a niche in what your story that you're telling. And one of the things that I like about OnlySky is there is a big emphasis on telling stories and making this a more personal thing. So I wanted to kind of share my journey, but since I'm sharing it, I'm going to throw in a lot of dick jokes, and I'm going to throw in a lot of like professional wrestling references and weirdness in it. Lots of Dungeons and Dragons, which applies to like 4% of the population, but it's my 4%. Damn it.
Yeah, but these. I mean, I was saying this to my boys last night because they're obsessed with. They're almost 12, but they're obsessed with Stranger Things, and they're like, what's D&D, and they're like, the idea that running up the hill, by Kate Bush is now sort of number one, and thinking that, wow, the power of this thing that is Stranger Things to elevate something way beyond what it otherwise would have been. I can imagine D&D sales just going through the roof. But anyway,
very much so. And I'm waiting till I haven't watched the season yet. I'm waiting. My wife's leaving town for a thing next weekend, so I'm watching it that weekend. And my kids are just a little too young for it, so I'm gonna have to solo it while they're sleeping. But
there's a surprising. I don't know if you're care about this, but there's a surprising amount of swearing in it. Actually, I thought for and it gets more and more. But whatever, Mike.
Well, not the swearing. I'm not as concerned about as much as the
and quite a lot of gore and stuff. And
that's more what I'm concerned about. Yeah, I just in the last couple of months, I was like, okay, fine, you guys can watch Dragon Ball Z. There's the chickens. I completely have. I also was kind of discussing this with my wife this morning. I'm trying to weaponize my ADD, which is why we started with a question about my non-spiritual journey, and now we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons.
There you go. This is obviously an obsession of yours. You were talking about your Vancouver article, and
right. The paper lasted for a little while. It's now defunct, and I have PDF files of my stories somewhere, or my articles somewhere. But wanted to bring it into my stand-up comedy. Never really was able to. Have really explored a lot of, listened to a lot of podcasts, read a lot of articles. I do mostly Audible because again, with the ADD, I kind of have to do two things at once. It's really hard for me to just sit with a book. So, when OnlySky, I guess the way I learned about OnlySky was from the podcast. Started with the Puzzle in a Thunderstorm group. They do Scathing Atheist and God Awful Movies and a couple others. I'd heard about him at Meta before then, but I hadn't really followed him on Twitter or anything like that. But then they mentioned that he was, I think they talked about him a lot on our podcast. So then I started listening to The Friendly Atheist, and he'd mentioned that he was leaving Pathos. And I was just kind of sitting in my room and reading through the articles. I was like, I really still want to be funny, and I need more validation. So, crafted my first article on that. And one of the things that I realized after I got my first article was that, after you get onboarded, I was like, oh shit, it's a real job now. I actually have to do things. So now I'm, kind of brainstorming what my second article is going to be and how that's all going to kind of play out. I had no idea how the whole concept of pitching an article worked and how the editing worked, because from your first article to your second article, it changes quite a bit. And I'm excited about that, but also realized I'd always wanted to be a writer, but then you realize a lot of stuff goes into actually being a writer. As I was reading your articles, I was like, wow, he does a really good job of citing stuff. I should do that. This is how you're supposed to do it. Oh, this is much better than what I did. So realizing that I need to do a lot more research, and
it's one of those things. I mean, I'm 4,500 articles down the road in terms of blogging and writing. So it's sometimes I think, is there anything else I've got to say? So I was like, what is there to talk about now? I've literally discussed everything that I want to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
And things come around in different ways, and then you get a new audience. So it's right, most of you haven't heard what I said 7 years ago or something. So I need to say it again, and I can say it a bit better now, and and you just get better at what you do. But
And you kind of grow as a person too. It's one of the things that I like about this community is that it really encourages a lot of personal growth and a lot of I think one of the places that not all Christianity obviously, but a lot of Christianity pushes is that you cannot get better without Jesus. This is the only way that you can improve yourself. You just have to improve yourself through faith. You can't get better through personal discovery or any of that. And I've read a lot of books that I've listened to a lot of books that I've heard recommended on podcasts that were one was them. I haven't had my coffee yet. I should mention that because I thought because of our time difference, I screwed up the time we were starting. White Too Long is one of them, where it was an exploration about white supremacy in churches and in Christianity. I think mostly in America, but I wouldn't have picked that book up, and it wouldn't have really done a lot of, personal work on white supremacy, male, patriarchy. Like I've done a lot of reading on those topics, and I probably wouldn't have if I wasn't being encouraged by our community.
Yeah. So you are now, so you're involved in or will be involved in more writing and whatnot. But as far as your atheism goes, let's just dwell on atheism discreetly for a second. What do you find is the most powerful arguments for atheism, and likewise for theism? Is there anything that you think, that's a pause for thought, that, or do you think there's nothing in theism that's worthy of worrying about?
I do know that I have a lot of really close people in my life that are religious. Like my dad still is Christian. My I say still is, like I'm expecting him to change, so that he's fine where he's at. My mother-in-law and my father-in-law are both very religious. I think they actually met in seminary school. I do feel like there is a lot of religious people that I know are happy in like a flavor of happy that I don't know that I necessarily like. I don't have the luxury of being like, oh well, I'll just put my faith in God for that, and I'll we'll say that's good, and I'll just this is happening for a reason, but I just am going to trust that things are going to work out, or that I am a little bit. I can feel myself sometimes getting a little bit envious of that, but then at the same time, whenever I hear of those, like, okay, well, I'm just going to let go and let God, and like, well, I could, or I can just be comfortable in not understanding. And I'm a average-ish intelligent guy, but I'm also really comfortable knowing that there's a lot of things that I'm just not going to understand unless I put a lot of hard work and effort into it. And I got 5 kids. I'm all out of effort, man. Like, I'm already working hard 24/7. Like I'm totally comfortable just shelving some things and being like, no, I'm all right. I'm all right with just knowing that, like, I can't understand, like, I don't understand the physics of the Big Bang. I'm all right with that. I have friends that are physicists that I'm like, this guy knows it. He's explained it to me a couple of times. I kind of get it. If 5 minutes after he leaves, I can't call him up and be like, okay, wait, I almost had it. Explain it to me again, because that's abusing the friendship, But
that's what I have with having multiple sclerosis these days. Is I read a book and I'm like, oh, that's one of the best books I've ever read. It's just knock down arguments. It's just so good. And then literally 2 days later, it's like, what was in that book again? Oh, so now I highlight books. I don't care anymore about like what books look like. I just highlight the crap out of them and write notes in them, because then when I want to come back to them, I just want a synopsis of the main stuff in there that's that was golden, and then I can just go straight to it and then really quickly remind myself. But yeah, and that's actually why I write so many articles, because if I don't write an article, then that knowledge I've gained from anything I've read just goes. Like I don't have that retention that I used to have. And so I just basically have to write something about it. Otherwise it's useless me having read that book.
No, and that's one of the disadvantages of doing audiobooks is I'll hear a thing and I'll be like, I can't really highlight that. And if I could, I shouldn't do it while I'm driving. But yeah, that is nice.
Yeah. So, that's that. Oh, sorry. You can't even see it. Yeah,
no, I got it. See it.
Yeah. It's only because someone said nice, good tip in the live chat. Yeah. Carry on.
Yeah. As far as arguments for atheism, I kind of feel like the more I learned about critical thinking and all that, the more I was like, well, atheism is just kind of like the null hypothesis. I haven't seen, I don't know if it's evidence for atheism or lack of evidence for theism, I think is where it comes down to for me. Like I consider myself a skeptic first before an atheist. And if I found convincing evidence of like something that couldn't be explained, and the only and it didn't fall into the God of the gaps, and like not like this can't be explained, therefore God, but like this has to be God, therefore it is God. Like if I found a convincing argument or something like that came across my hoped across my view, I would be like, okay, fine, that's a convincing argument. I'm totally comfortable changing positions on that. I just haven't yet.
You talked about how your parents-in-law are very religious, and I've seen one of your stand-up routines talking about how your wife is religious, that you have a kind of interfaith relationship. Is she still religious, and how does that work?
I would consider her religious. There are days where she's like, we talk about it quite a bit. And that's one of the reasons why I actually really one of the reasons that I have such a fun marriage, honestly, is because we have different opinions on some things, and we can discuss things in a respectful and kind of curious manner. She will still say like, yeah, I pray about this, I pray about that, and like, I don't make fun of her for it because it's something that makes her happy, and I love her and I want her to be happy. And whether I'm she's also kind of reframed it sometimes where it's like, it could be prayer, it could be meditation. I'm just focusing my energy on this. That squeaking is my dog right now.
Yeah, I figured that was a squeaky toy.
That wasn't the chickens, not the chickens this time. That's my dog. This is
Ruth Bader Dogsburg. Is that correct?
No, Ruth Bader Dogsburg passed away sadly a couple years ago. This is Griffin, who, come here, dickhead, who has a favorite toy that couldn't be a quiet toy, because why would it be a quiet toy? Why? Hey, I'm busy right now. Can we play in a little bit? I promise we're gonna walk. Sorry.
So, with regard, like, I commend you, because if my partner came up to me and said, "Oh, I was praying for this to happen," I just couldn't bite my tongue. I'd have to say, you do realize God can't change his mind, because with an infallible foreknowledge about future events, that praying for anything to come about that God already didn't have in mind to come about is a completely pointless affair.
And well, let me I guess when I ask her about that, that is actually part of the conversations we've had. And what she looks at it was more like, I am looking for, she's not asking to change things necessarily. She's like, hey, I just want to have enough strength to tackle this thing that's coming up for us. She's not necessarily praying to change events. She's more praying for, like, I want to be able to manage this challenge that's coming up. She's not praying to, like, no. Ruth was replaced by a much nicer dog, honestly.
That is James. By the way, James Apperson, that is a brilliant, for those who are just listening to this, James Apperson is so Casey's one of Casey's former dogs was Ruth Bader Dogsburg, and James says, I hope you didn't replace Ruth with an ultra conservative bitch. Talking about like in dog speak, but also in what happened in the SCOTUS. But anyway, so
when we adopted this dog, we actually made sure that he was not. We interviewed the dog owners that we got him from, and we said, like, hey, this is important to us. We don't want a dog that's pro forced birth. We're a pretty liberal family. We don't want a dog who's like a Second Amendment all the way. Second Amendment is the gun thing for British folks. We just. I'm fine having an interfaith marriage, but an interpolitical dog to human relationship, that was just going to be too much. But with the squeaking,
that's a really interesting thing, because actually, an interfaith this talks about the primacy of politics against religion, isn't it? Where I think it would genuinely be far more difficult to have an interpolitical marriage than an interfaith marriage. I think faith is adaptable in a way that you can adapt faith to fit to. I mean, that's why there are 42,000 different denominations of Christianity, right? But it's, unless you like full on, okay, you can adapt your politics, but there is something so abrasive about like politics in general, and to have a liberal and a conservative in a married relationship, it would be just incredibly difficult, I think.
And that's my parents. and it's funny because, like, I'll walk into the living room and my dad's watching Fox News, and then I walk into my mom as a seamstress, and she has her workstation set up in her bedroom. So I'll walk through the bedroom or walk through the living room. Hey, Dad, how's it going? Checking with him. Walk into the bedroom and my mom's watching MSNBC or CNN. Like, hey, Mom, how's it going? It's, but they seem happy. I like
they seem happy in their two separate places in the house. They seem happy, like not interacting at all.
Just when they're watching the news, and then they get done watching the news, and it's there's, I think every relationship you have like certain topics where it's like we just don't agree with that, and it's kind of a hot topic. What was it? sacred cows. You know, we're like, you know, everybody's got like their, hey, this is a thing that I cannot discuss.
Yeah.
In a non-emotional way.
Which
you know, like
we're good at compartmentalizing, and I think certain things is like we just don't talk about that because otherwise we'd fail to be in a relationship.
Exactly. And I love you more than my love for you is a higher priority than where I'm at on this topic. But also I don't, you know, if we steer into this direction, I'm going to be shitty to you and I don't want to be shitty to you. So let's just kind of stay.
That takes quite a lot of metacognition, quite a lot of strategizing in a relationship. I think, you know, hats off to the people that can do that because it is more challenging. Evidently it must be. But you know, it can work. So you now have 5 children. So you had you took on 2 children with marrying your wife, and you've subsequently had 3 further children, 2 of whom are twins.
Yes.
I say that as a father of twins myself, and in fact an author of a book, Twins: A Survival Guide for Dads.
Oh, gonna buy that.
Yeah, but it's much more geared for the UK audience really than the American audience, like with the NHS and this health system.
with your healthcare and your
so
every 4th of July I have to bring up with somebody like, so like if we lost we'd have healthcare, right? Not saying that, like, you know, that's a question better answered for historians, but really it comes down to that issue for me a lot because, you know, like, okay, so 5 kids.
Of course, we do have a government who's trying really, really hard at the moment to make our healthcare system just like yours. So, you know, there you go. But anyway, so 5 kids.
Yeah. So met my wife. She had 2 kids. Actually, one of the first we met at a stand when I was doing stand-up comedy at an open mic. I had shot her. I was still one of my favorite moves. I said, hey, another comic's going to come up here in a minute. So if you give me your phone number, then we can text and then we don't have to interrupt the comics. And I was still proud of that move to this day. So she said, okay, sure. So then one of the first messages she sends me is, hey, just so you know, I've got 2 kids and one of them has Down syndrome. Are you still interested? And I, you know, like we mentioned, I love playing Dungeons and Dragons, and a lot of Dungeons and Dragons is going into a tavern and being offered a quest or an adventure. And I just thought, like, well, damn it, if that doesn't sound like an adventure, yeah, I'm interested. So, my oldest kid just finished grad school. She became a therapist, like me. My fault, sorry. Lots of secondary trauma that she's going to really enjoy. But we just went to Chicago to witness her graduation. My second oldest has Down syndrome and is also on the autism spectrum. She's mostly nonverbal, which is, like I said, an adventure. Then we were together for a few years and we welcomed my first biological kid, and we decided, like, okay, we're going to wait for a year to find out if I'm going to get the SNP. And because, like, you know, Beth was like, are you okay with only having daughters? I'm like, I don't care. That's fine with me. It's not a big deal. So I was literally scheduling the appointment with, because I had health insurance, to get fixed. And then she called me and she said, hey, I need you to pick up a pregnancy test on the way home. And I said, okay, but I'm going to pick up 2 because if it turns up positive, I want you to take it again. And I think that's what jinxed us into having twins. And when she first turned up positive, I started laughing and she started crying. And then we were in the, you know, she was getting the sonogram and the doctor got really quiet as we were just kind of, you know, bullshitting with her as she's like rubbing the jelly on her tummy and putting the thing on it. And doctor got really, really quiet. And my first thought was, oh, we lost it. That's so sad. And Beth goes, that's my wife. She goes, is it twins? And I thought, oh, my poor wife, she thinks we're going to have 2 and we're not even going to have 1. And like in my head, you know, you're already like, okay, I'll take the next couple of days off because, you know, I'm not sure, like, everything that a miscarriage details, but emotionally I'll make sure I'm off work. This is going to be sad, but that's okay. We were talking about getting fixed anyways. And, you know, like, just, I'm doing the whole, like, I'm like 10 yards ahead before the doctor says, sorry, 10 meters ahead before the doctor turns around. She goes, I think it is. And I said, are you sure there's just not like something on your glasses? And she turned the monitor around and showed me. And then I started crying immediately and my wife started laughing. As she liked to say, all my last good eggs were jumping ship. And I was like, we have to buy a new car because we don't have a minivan right now. And we can't even fit everybody in the car we have because I'm practical and not even going through all the whole like, oh shit, this is a whole new tax bracket I'm about to get in, whole new level of poverty that I did yet to experience. But yeah, so then we found out, of course, there were twin boys because nothing would match in the house if we were going to decorate with any kind of gender stuff, which I actually don't think we did. But yeah, so now the boys are both 9. One of the boys is on the autism spectrum, so we've got like a whole sampler platter of stuff going on in my house. Yeah, they're funny as hell though.
Challenging times for. I mean, my partner's got 2 children from another relationship, from her previous marriage, and we're not married, but and her son has just had their second, who's got Down syndrome. So that's, and of my twins, one of them is on the spectrum as well. Almost certainly looks like something called PDA, pathological demand avoidance, which I can tell you
we're looking into that too.
Very, very challenging.
It's an interesting journey. It's parenting without a net is what I like to go. Okay, now off topic question, but giving all of our similarities, Jonathan, are you my real father?
I am. Yes. I'm glad you were inferring or implying that I'm at least 18 years older than you. So I just had a tough paper round. I'm young looking, really. Yeah. So there are a few similarities there. So parenting. How have you found? Obviously, there are a huge amount of challenges involved in parenting 5 children with the variety of children that you have, and the particular needs they all have. Special. I mean, all children have their own special needs, right? But well, how have you navigated this as an atheist? Is that brought anything different, or do you think about things in a different way in how you deliver, any of your teaching or any of your parenting at all?
And I kind of got this tip from, I think it was from Dr. Stephen Novello from the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast. There's a lot of, if my kids ask me like, okay, well, what's, I'm trying to like, are aliens real? Rather than saying like yes, no, or whatever, I'm like, well, how would we go about figuring that out? And then I just ask a lot of questions and kind of walk them through like, how would we know that? And I thought that was a really great tip that I thought from Dr. Yeah, so I try to use that as much as possible.
Yeah, kind of like the Socratic method, the Socratic
exactly,
dialectic, which is like let's asking questions as a way of arguing with people, but in a way of like facilitating. It's coaching, isn't it? In a way of facilitating them to generate their own answers.
And can be infinitely frustrating when your kids are 9 years old and have a conclusion that they want to meet. So they're it's fun to walk them through that, but just knowing, as I've learned, that they're going to reach a really weird conclusion because they already have a conclusion that they want to justify. They're not quite old enough to like realize that, like, okay, well, that might be some flawed thinking. But I can remember my mom, I was asking her, back when I was pretty young, like, okay, like the Adam and Eve, like, okay, if Adam and Eve are real, but then also evolution is real, then like, well, which one's real? And my mom doing that same thing with me, but being young enough to be like, no, you're the parent, all the things, just give me the fucking answer. But my mom tried, really, I found it as a kid really frustrating, but then kudos to my parents, where they would do that same thing, where they very much were like, okay, well, let's let you figure this out. And that's kind of the philosophy that I've really tried to instill in my kids, and my wife and I are very much on the same page with that, of like, like, okay, well, let's, asking them and helping them, trying to reach their own conclusion. We've done the same thing with religious questions as well. I think that they might have gone to like some Easter services with my mother-in-law when they were really, really young. But the fun thing about starting with like okay, you don't know any of these things, we're not pushing this religion, non-religion, anything about that, is that they've read the Percy Jackson books and they've read, being into D&D, they're like, okay, well, can't think of any reason why, Zeus is a lot. Zeus throws lightning. He seems a lot more interesting than Jesus to me. So, like all of the pantheons are equally legitimate in their eyes, which I think is kind of a neat.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I remember teaching a child once, and we were doing Vikings, and then child was like, "Oh, I really like the Norse gods," and said, "Oh, I'm going to believe in the Norse gods." I'd say to him,
that's exactly what my daughter's done.
You can't just choose to believe something because it's cool. It's like, yeah, why not? I was like, no, but really, you can't. That's not how you do epistemology, mate. but
I've been okay with it because it's fascinating. One of the nights I was putting my kid to bed, failing to put my kid to bed. I said, "Oh, for the love of God, please just go to sleep." And my son that's on the spectrum stands up in his bed and looks at me and goes, "Which one, Jesus or Zeus?" You're stalling. Go to sleep. Like, I don't have an answer.
Yeah. That's it. It's funny because I think about my own children, how we do, as a child, I used to go to church occasionally with my parents for particular occasions, I guess. But also I went to schools where they were Christian schools, but in not an overtly hardcore, just in a sort of nominalist, nominal sort of C of E Britain kind of way. But you used to go to like chapel or whatever on whatever days, and so you'd be experiencing how Christianity worked, right? But my boys don't have any frame of reference, right? They've not sung the songs, they don't know the prayers, and I often think, is that a good or bad thing? Like, yes, it's all nonsense, but is there some kind of cultural value to being in, like, or to experiencing religious ceremony? Do you know what I mean? Like, and I don't know the answer. It's just a kind of open question.
And that's one of the fun things that my wife and I have explored too, because like her father was like a non-denominational pastor, and so she was like church 5 nights a week. Like her whole social world was all church based, and since she's hasn't attended church in the time that we've been together, which is coming up on 14 years now, but through this whole long tail that I won't go into now, but like she's I'm not necessarily like trying to convert her away from it or anything like that, but there will be like there'll be something that pops up where she knows it inside and out, and I'm like, where the hell did you get this? And she's like, oh, it's just part of this culture. But I also don't know if it's necessarily any different than like, yeah, there's all these religious like touchstones that people know, but there's also other touchstones that like if you're into like a LARPing community, or other some other thing that's got, I'm trying to think if there's like a parallel to like a religious upbringing that would be like a
kind of new agey sort of thing. You can get a lot of parallels with the new age sort of, or paganism.
Yeah, new age stuff. Yeah, I've definitely known people that have been like, oh yeah, we're raising our kids with a lot of crystals in their bedroom so that they have positive energy. And I'm like, are they choking hazards? Because he's definitely gonna, there's gonna be a spiritual experience there, but you're not gonna like it. But yeah, there's definitely new agey stuff, or I don't know, like, not that it's an exact, parallel, but like Star Wars families, like my family's a big nerdy, and we get a lot of we talk a lot of Star Wars, and we talk a lot of nerd stuff, but so my family will be noticing things in the world that people who are not into that, or people who grew up very, very religious, are like, I don't understand, what's the Force? Like, it's the power that binds us all and draws us together. And they're like, no, that's Jesus. I'm like, no, it's the Force. The prophet Obi-Wan told me so.
Fact. So talking about parenting, I mean, you've as hinted, you've got children who will present particular challenges to you as a parent. I don't know what the differences are between the American sort of healthcare and education system and the UK in terms of provisions for children with special needs.
Hopefully they're significant.
Yeah. So that's pretty much telling me that that things are very challenging for you. Then, are they, in terms of provision for your children?
Yeah, there's. Do you have IEPs in individual education plans?
Yeah. We used to call them IEPs, and we moved away from that. But yeah.
So yeah, a few times a year we have a meeting with the school, which is always anxiety producing, because you're looking at the areas in which your child is lagging behind. You're looking at what the school is doing to make progress on it. A lot of the time you're finding the area where the school, whether through their fault or no fault or if anybody's, is like not meeting your child's needs, or, hey, we had this plan, we were going to do A, B, and C, and then finding out that A, B, and C didn't happen. And I'm not saying this, my kids have worked with some really, really amazing folks that are really, really doing their best. I live in a really small town, so we don't have as many resources as bigger cities might have, which is, kind of presents another set of challenges. But a
lot of times it depends on the resources available to the school, or to,
exactly,
in our case, the school or the education authority. In the UK, you get a situation whereby that if your child is sufficiently of need, then they would be diagnosed with X, Y, and Z, and they would get, it used to be called a statement, it's now called an EHCP, an educational healthcare plan, where the local authority, because all the schools are basically run by the council, whatever large overriding council that would be, you would actually sign a contract with the council to say that actually my child is entitled to 25 hours of one-to-one per week, and blah, 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 X, Y, and Z. And actually it is a legally binding contract, which the council then has to fulfill in order to say, right, this child has a statement of needs, and we are going to fulfill those needs by providing X, Y, and Z, and the school has to do that. And of course, the problem is the school getting enough funding to do that, and all this, and this is the politics of education.
Yeah, really similar.
Yeah,
there have been a couple of instances in which we have sought legal counsel to have to enforce X, Y, and Z. Sorry, I just said Z, and I'm really excited about it. Instead of C.
You know what? I just took that. I took that. I didn't even think, because you were speaking properly. I just didn't think anything of it.
That's a similar. I accidentally stepped on the squeaky toy, and I found it again. It's my dog down there. I don't know how to turn the camera on without fucking up the feed here. But yeah, that is a really similar process. And yeah, there have been a couple times where we've had to, like, okay, no, really, you guys are supposed to do this, and sought legal counsel to make sure. And I think one of the significant challenges, like, I guess there's two things. One of them, I feel, and I might not notice this if I wasn't working as a therapist, but I feel like the way that the IEP meetings are set up aren't necessarily trauma informed, because you start every meeting reviewing all of your kids' deficits, and which is really kind of traumatizing to the parents, because like, I know what my kid's struggling with. I'm dealing with it every day at home. When we're starting off this meeting, like, hey, here's all the ways that your kid is having a hard time. It just, it kind of puts you on the defensive and makes you feel kind of crappy to start things off with. I can't remember what my second point was now.
Have you noticed? I mean, special needs is interesting in the religious context, because I suppose religious people have to say, who believe in omni-God, the all powerful, all knowing, all loving God. You have to say, because I think this is actually a somewhat underused argument in atheistic circles, and I've done it on previous videos in terms of phobias and psychological. If you've got schizophrenia, then then how do you explain that? How do we explain that God has given this person a psychological, in the same way that we would seek an understanding why God would give someone cancer or this or that? It's the same with psychological conditions, and with special needs in children. So the children aren't fully grown moral agents, right? So they can't be punished in the same way that adults can. And you could say, oh, he's got cancer because he wasn't a very good person, or whatever, I don't know. But how do religious people justify God giving children fundamental psychological challenges and conditions? I know that's more of a philosophical question, but therefore religious people must react somewhat differently to special needs children. I don't know, do you have any experience of religious people and special needs?
I don't want to tell too much of this story, because it's more my wife's story to tell, because I was not around, when she was pregnant with our second. But she has relayed stories to me about how, she would be telling people when she was pregnant, like, yeah, my daughter's going to have Down syndrome, and people saying, well,
if you just pray enough, I have a friend who they thought their kid was going to have Down syndrome, and they just prayed on it a lot, and then the kid was born and they didn't have Down syndrome. And like, not, it's the best of intentions, but how shitty a thing is that to say to a person? Like, are you telling me that I'm not a good person? Are you telling me that I have unresolved sin, and so my daughter's being punished for it? Are you telling me that I am, I am, my child's being punished, the fathers of, or the sins of the mother are being visited on the child? What exactly are you saying there?
Was it my fault for not just praying enough?
Exactly.
There are so many problems. Not to mention the scientifically crazy nonsense that is. But there are so many issues with that. Okay, sorry, I interrupted you. Carry on.
No, it's okay. That was that was a lot of the, which maybe was one of the reasons that she doesn't attend church anymore, is that there has been a lot of that. Carries a lot of guilt. Like, okay, is this bad thing happening because I did this other thing, or because I am not a good enough person? That whole, I'm trying to think of the book I just read. I just finished this book, Girlhood, where there's a chapter where she talks about how this prison was designed so that prisoners would always feel like somebody was watching them, then kind of would get them to stay in line just through fear of always being observed, and how internalized that is in some folks. And I've really noticed that a lot of the time in not just her, but other people that have had religious upbringings that I've known, that they have this internalized shame of always feeling like I've somehow let someone down, and that's why this thing is happening. Wanting to assign agency to, things that, logically they might know, like, oh, these are just kind of shitty circumstances, or this is just a thing that happened that was unfortunate. But then also like wanting, we all want to have reasons for things. We all want to, we all seek the why. But then when that why comes back to internalize, like, I'm not a good enough person, and that's why this bad thing happened. I'm not parenting the right way. I'm not.
Yeah. And it's interesting because this fits really biblically. I mean, there's a couple of things I want to say to what you said then. Yeah. So the Deuteronomic histories in the Bible are a way of, so what happened in the Old Testament is like trying to understand why bad things were happening to the chosen people, which, so therefore it's like, well, they must have not done this right, or they must have not done this ceremonial law right, or behaved like this. So it was all about looking for like causal understanding for why crap was happening to the supposedly good people. And then it got to such a stage where like it was harder and harder to justify. So then they looked to the Greeks and who had an understanding of heaven and hell, and they said, okay, so instead of like balancing the books in our earthly lives, we can balance the books by saying it's all right because it'll be fine in the end because heaven, and it's all right. Yeah. The bad people will go to hell, and that's how we balance those books. So I mean that there is a lot of, when you think that a supernatural entity is able to see you at all times, and if you're a nun, even through your clothes, as you said earlier, like, then obviously things to do with guilt and shame, because all of your thoughts are being read, and all of your actions that otherwise would go unseen and unnoticed, that might be a bit weird or dodgy or whatever, you are thinking the whole time, God is seeing this. God is seeing my mind working on why I'm doing this. And there must be, religious people must have to go through so many psychological, ramifications to their belief.
I also think that the God works in mysterious ways argument is just the dog needing to go back into the house. It's sort of a catch-all for like, I don't understand it, or it's too traumatizing, or it hurts too much for me to explore this. So I'm just going to chalk it up to God working in mysterious ways.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to give people the context here. We got the timing wrong to this interview. So this is an hour and a half out as far as Casey is concerned. So he was literally like, I'm reading one of your articles now. We'll be online in an hour, in 90 minutes, right? And I said, mate, it's 2 minutes. And he's like, so this is where we are. So a sudden like Casey.
Yeah, that's why I'm outside with the chickens and the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the kids in their cages.
So that idea of watching, but then interestingly, the benefit to watching or at least, sorry, the benefit to feeling like you are being watched is that it turns out that Christian people are less likely to cheat in exams and things. And there's been some really interesting studies on that. And so it's like, what's the causal thing going on here? So the Christians will say, oh, see, religious people are much more moral in these particular situations. Like, oh, actually, let's do some science, and let's really unpick what's going on here and what is a causality. And it turns out that it's not that you're religious, it's that you feel you're being watched, because you can replicate the same data by literally putting so one of the experiments is they primed people with loads of religious texts and then got them to sit a test, and then the ones they didn't prime, the control group, cheated more than the people who primed with religious texts. But they got exactly the same results by putting just a picture of some eyes up, or by telling the people that there was a ghost that was really active in the building and stuff, and that, you know, people have reported the ghosts like looking over them and stuff like that. And it turns out that people who were primed with that cheated less. So it's not so much the religious content; it's the feeling that you are being watched. Then gives you a stronger sense of veto.
Well, also, if I'm just going to be forgiven for cheating anyways, then why not cheat?
An interesting, it's like sin now, get forgiven later. Hey,
exactly.
It's okay. I'll just, you know,
I realized I wasn't entirely. You said ghosts, and it reminded me of the one thing where where I do tell my kids I don't use the Socratic method for parenting, is what I'm going to call it, is when they ask about ghosts, I'm like, nope, not real. I don't even go through the whole thing, partly because I remember being terrified of it as a kid, and partly because I live in the house. I bought the house that I live in now for my parents, and I grew up in this house. And I'm in a small town, and people will say like, oh yeah, that house is totally haunted. And so my kids hear that, and it scares the shit out of them. And somebody will say like, oh no, we put a marble on the floor and it just moved right across. I'm like, yeah, the house was built in 1915. It's not level. That's why the marble moved. So like that is the one thing where I'll tell my kids like, nope, not real, not a thing. Why aren't they naked? If ghosts are real, then why aren't they naked? Are there ghosts of clothes? And I recently read a quote that said like, if ghosts were real and could hurt you, there'd be very few Caucasian people left. And so I try to point that out. I'm like, no, if ghosts were real and they could hurt you, then somewhere in our ancestors probably would have gotten something they deserved, and we wouldn't be here. So no, they're not real.
Yeah,
fair enough. Go back to bed.
That end of conversation. Having been a former child yourself, as most adults have been, so as far as I understand biology,
yes,
and working. Do you, as a therapist, do you work with children or adults?
I work with young adults, and I think my youngest client right now is 15, I think. And the population I work with is people who experience psychosis. So like you mentioned, people who have schizophrenia, some people with bipolar disorder, people with primary thought disorders is the team that I work on.
So have you noticed since when you were a child that children have changed, particularly have opinions and attitudes changed? Do you think, does it give you hope for the future more? Or are there elements of childhood now that also give you cause for concern?
I think kids nowadays are much better than when I was a kid. I can remember having a lot more prevalent bigotry when I was a kid, specifically like homophobia. Like I probably up through my 20s, I was perfectly comfortable using homophobic words. And now, as I've learned the damage that stuff can cause, my kids have never heard, to the best of my knowledge, my kids have not heard most slurs because they're just not hearing it, where not through myself and my wife, but I feel like they would, if they were hearing that stuff in school, they'd be coming home and saying, Dad, what does this word mean? Dad, what is it? The kid told me this, what's it mean? And they're eventually going to hear that and have to deal with it. But the fact that, they're going into 4th and 6th grade, my younger kids, and have never heard those things, gives me a lot of hope that a lot of bigotry is starting to be weeded out.
my kids are asking a lot smarter questions than I asked at their age. I was perfectly content to just sit and watch He-Man and, you know, not really question the universe. And my kids are, you know, not just my kids. Kids these days are asking a lot better questions than me and my friends asked when I was little, which gives me a lot of hope for the future.
So I'm just it's interesting you say that, because I've written a book for kids from probably 9 to 14, but actually anyone can enjoy it. So Curse of the Maya is a book that I wrote for kids, and we've just finished writing the sequel, and it is being picked up by schools up and down the country, and used as a core text for English and history, and that's really pleasing, obviously, so some validation. But as a former teacher, you know, we wrote that quite cynically, knowing exactly what makes a good book, right? And it turns out that teachers love it, because we've ticked all the boxes as former teachers ourselves. But also, I was big on philosophy for children, which is called P4C in the UK, philosophy for children, which is what a lot of schools try and do, and they fit little like discussions and debates.
Pretty sure they're trying to outlaw that in America.
Sorry?
I'm pretty sure they're trying to outlaw that in America.
Yeah. SCOTUS is onto that this week, I think. But so we try and intersperse that text with loads of opportunities for P4C, you know, where we talk maybe about a little bit about time travel here, and about, well, if you the grandfather paradox, and the fact that if you could go back and kill your own grandfather, then would you just cease to exist? And those kind of like just little nuggets where the children be like the two main. So, you know, the two main characters in that are twins, boy and a girl, because it appeals to boys and girls equally. And then we've got different, you know, one really likes conspiracy theories. It's basically like Scooby-Doo, effectively, or the X-Files, but modernized. And but a lot of critical thinking in the book. And my broad point is that, like, I don't know if 30, 40 years ago people were writing books with the intention of getting kids to think in critical ways or exciting ways, or like float their boat with like really fun and interesting stuff for a class to sit down and say, right, we're going to put this reading book down because that's a really cool bit. Right, everyone get in a circle. Let's have a debate. Let's have a discussion. ABC, add, build, contest, and then you teach your kids how to add add a new point, build on the previous point, so they're listening, or contest the point and do that with respect. So you're teaching them how to debate, but you're taking on stuff like that. Now, you know, so I'm just building on what you're saying, which is that the kids I think are given a lot more opportunities to think nowadays with the kind of stimuli that they are given. Yeah.
There is another advantage I'm feeling is the you know, as I'm watching the cartoons that they're watching, you know, my cartoons when I was a kid was basically like, you know, good guy shows up, bad guy does bad thing, good guy punches bad guy, and then credits. Maybe if you're lucky and it's G.I. Joe, then we learn to not run into the street, you know. So for there's like the more you know comment, you know, moment. Now like Steven Universe is talking about, you know, there's a lot of representation of, you know, like gay characters of color. You know, I think there was like 2 black G.I. Joes when I was a kid, you know, and maybe Snake Eyes, but you couldn't tell, but you know, whatever. But yeah, there's a lot more they're seeing a lot more people there, and you know, dealing with the show She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. You know, the whole, like, the main villain of that ends up, the entire thing ends up being like a redemption story. You know, where, you know, Skeletor was always the bad guy, He-Man was always the good guy. You know, they really are like challenging the concept of good and evil and putting things into context, which was just not really, you know, to my knowledge, was not really done when I was a kid. So even through their media and you know, things that they're consuming, like your book, you know, they're getting chances to talk about that and think about that, where we just weren't really I don't know if programmed is the right word, but it wasn't really done as much when I was younger.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I've watched a lot of stuff with my kids over the years, and you start with, you know, their infant kind of cartoons and stuff, which are jam-packed full of maths and, you know, science, like little, you know, nuggets of learning, that they are basically not just cartoons to pass their time. They are educational cartoons, and that that is spread throughout the media at the moment. And actually, you know, you find that children get a lot of their moral learning. You know, the children aren't going to church anymore, right? So certainly in Britain, America's a different place, right? But in Britain,
yeah,
you don't get that kind of church. So they're not listening to the occasional good stories in the Bible, like the Good Samaritan, X, Y, and Z, and having a preacher stand up and say, this is how you should act in society. So where are they getting that kind of moral learning? Obviously the parents, but then the parents are busy and are working. There's so much media being consumed. But when you watch the media, they are generally exceptionally good at delivering moral teachings. They really are very good. And I don't think we give television output enough credit for actually doing the job of parenting an awful lot. Do you know what I mean?
No, I do. Well, and you know, just thinking about how behaviors are modeled for them through that media. You know, there is like Turning Red is a movie that came out from Disney pretty recently, and it just happened to come out
like about 10 times.
Yeah, it just happened to come out. You know, my daughter's is 11, and you know, is right in that age group where, you know, how awesome would it have been for girls when we were younger to have a validating movie like that, of like, you know, hormones suck and they can make you feel this way and they can make you feel that way, and your relationship with your family is really tricky and it's nuanced, you know, like
you've got Upside Down, you've got Turning Red, which is about anger and etc. etc. You've got Coco, which deals with like death and memory in a really powerful and brilliant way. You've got Up, that was about aging and, you know, like identity and age and all sorts of things. You just go through the whole gamut of the output of these films, and you're thinking they are nailing some really big, difficult topics. And artificial intelligence in What's Wrong with Ron or whatever.
What's Wrong with Ron?
Well, I forget whether that's not the name of it, but that like loads of really
Ron's Gone Wrong.
Wrong's Gone Wrong, yeah, something like that.
Yeah. No, which is great because I'm lazy and I don't want to do any parenting. I'd rather what the TV does.
Yeah.
We tried to do a TV free day yesterday and we mostly nailed it. But yeah, just, you know, not to say that I'm trying to let the media do all the work. You know, luckily I live in Hood River, Oregon, which is for a lot of folks it's kind of a vacation town, but it's also like a really big agricultural town. So we have a lot of opportunities to do things like mountain biking and rock climbing, and also learn about like how pears are, you know, grown and all that stuff. So yeah, we're trying to pepper in some real life experience too. And
that's cool, yeah. Ricky Johnson says, so he's speaking to someone else. 2 out of 3 of my kids have more critical ability than I did at their age. One of my daughters just told me that she's joining some crazy religion because her boyfriend is in it. So obviously still, obviously one challenge out of 3 there that needs some kind of parental input.
I want to know what the crazy religion is.
I'm sure he'll let you know.
I've got questions now.
Yeah. You're the therapist. You can help. So actually, there's a question as a therapist with young adults and whomsoever you deal with. Have you come across the ramifications of a dangerous religiosity at all?
There have been a couple. I have one. I'm going to say potential dangerous things, but they haven't really. Let me talk through this actually as I'm answering it here. One of my clients is a Somali immigrant whose family wanted to do some kind of they wanted to do some kind of ritual to try and rid him of voices. They brought it up with him, and he was like, I'm not going to do that, which, you know, it probably wouldn't have hurt, but I'm glad that he's also, you know, taking his meds. I have another client that has experienced just constant auditory hallucinations, like they're never not talking to him, and so he told me that, you know, he's got an aunt that was very religious, so he would read the Bible a lot, just because the act of reading anything would get him to quiet down. So, you know, you know, on the one hand, I'm trying to respect the family's traditions and all that, but you know, and if it's, I'm also, especially in my line of work, a proponent for if it's working, I'm not going to mess with it, because if this is going to bring you some kind of peace, you know, as long as the voices aren't telling you I need to, hurt this person because the voices are telling me to, and the voices are telling me that they're Jesus and Jesus wants this person to be harmed. We do a lot of safety planning around that, like, hey, if the voices are telling you to do this, then you need to give this person a call, or you need to let somebody know. I haven't seen a lot of examples of people just abandoning meds in favor of prayer. I have been aware of some cases where that's happened, but in my other than those two examples, I can't think of anybody that's happened to. I do know that I want to say one of them probably did have a relative that said, no, you just need to pray more and it'll go away. But thankfully their family was very much like, we'll pray, but we're going to do the meds too.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, and this is obviously completely anecdotal, but my research has revealed, says James Appleton, troubling connections between religion and schizophrenia and other forms of mental illness. Obviously, I would need the citations for that, being the skeptic that I am, for those sort of claims.
I do know that there is a big hyper-religiosity, and epilepsy, I think, has some really... I remember reading that, not that that's the same thing, but as far as connection between, I know that there's some connection between those, but yeah.
Ricky's child that is dabbling is
Messianic Judaism is the religion.
So there you go. So there you go. So as we're sort of drawing towards something of a close, we have probably the topic that we haven't really covered so far in any depth is comedy. Yes. And comedy is an interesting area, both in terms of religion, but particularly in terms of politics. And there's always the conversation that goes on, which is why aren't there very many right-wing comedians? Why is right-wing comedy not funny? Why is it skewed left? So in the UK, the BBC, which is a national broadcaster, has come under a lot of pressure from the Conservative government because the pressure when the Conservatives are in power, the BBC are on tenterhooks, walking on eggshells, because they always think they're going to get defunded. So they always try and work really hard to appease the Conservatives, just in case they lose a license fee, which is massively important. Because so there was something called a MASH report that was, the Tory MPs were complaining that BBC was the comedy's all too liberal and having a go at the Tories. So then suddenly the MASH report got dropped, and then all these, then they're talking about trying to get on more right-wing comedians. But then, are there many right-wing comedians, and can the right wing be funny? What's your take on that whole sort of debate?
I as far as I got through your article before I realized I was going to be late. I do think that comedy is best when it's punching up. Nobody likes a bully, and when you're punching down, you're being a bully. One of the first times I stepped away from comedy was it was shortly after my wife and I had gotten serious in dating, and I was like, okay, well, this is going to be what it's like to be a dad with a kid with special needs. Let's see what it's like. And there had just been an episode of Family Guy that had come out, where there was a character that was voiced by an actress that has Down syndrome, and everybody was, at an open mic, you get everybody wanting to do their own little hot take, and there was just a lot of the comics that I knew and had considered friends were just really, really ready, just ready to rock with a lot of slurs and all that. And I just remember thinking, I don't think that I want to be part of this crowd anymore. And that kind of led to me straying away from it, because there was just a lot of punching down. Then, as I kind of have sort of maintained friendship with a lot of those people, a lot of them have made a 180 where they're like, no, that wasn't cool. We shouldn't do that. We're grown-ups now. I think that there is a right way, a way for the right to be funny, but I don't think that they'll do it. And that is, like humor where you're making fun of yourself. If they were willing to do that, I think that they could be pretty funny. But I don't think that they're going to be willing to do that, because the classic thing about bullies is they're not able to take a joke.
That's really interesting you said that. So in the UK, on the MASH report, indeed. So what the MASH report, which was a very left-wing attack on politics, basically in the UK, done by Nish Kumar, who I really like as a comedian. But they used to get on regularly a guy called Jeff Norcott. Now, Jeff Norcott is a right-wing comedian. But he just about made it work, and it was a very delicate balance, and he probably had to put an awful lot of thought into how he delivered his comedy, which is when he was attacking the left, he would do that on the back of a bit of self-deprecation in terms of some humor that he would do against himself, then a few digs about the right, or owning up to a few things on the right, before then attacking. So it was within a context that was far more balanced, rather than just an outright, I don't know, old school 1970s, 80s like right-wing comedy. And so you can get right-wing comedians, and they're at the moment this is a boon period for them, because it's all about social justice and cancel culture and fighting against the left-wing cancel culturists, which is obviously just complete nonsense in my opinion. But there are certain right-wing comedians who can just about make it work. But in the main, you're right. The idea is that most right-wing comedians are about punching down on those less fortunate in society, rather than the left-wing comedians are all about punching up against power, against the privilege, against things that can take a good punching and probably need a good punching. And that's generally, so you get this argument about punching up and punching down.
Yeah. And when my oldest got her bachelor's degree, my gift to her was a sword, because again, we're nerds in my house, and I had an opportunity you could put a little saying on the sword, and I really, really wanted to get something from Lord of the Rings on there, but Tolkien seems to be a little bit wordy, and I only had a few characters, and so the phrase that I went with was "speak truth to power," which is just a fucking great saying on a sword, honestly. If I thought of that first, I would have gone with that one. That would have been my alpha choice right there. But that I think is also part of the left versus right thing. Well, I don't want to speak for the UK, but at least in America, truth has really become the enemy of the right. If you're watching anything about the January 6th action going on, the hearings there, truth has really become the enemy of a lot of mostly of the right, and
well, thank goodness Fox have gone back, and actually they've seen that 13 million people were watching it, and they weren't going to show the January 6th committee, so they've gone back for economic reasons and shown it, financial reasons, so they've shown that. But actually it seems to be doing a good job of disseminating some of the nonsense now, or disseminating some of the criminal culpability of these people. But there's obviously still going to be pushback. But you're right, truth in America is a debatable subject. Yeah,
the moment I first heard alternative facts, I was like, oh, we're going down a dark path. This isn't gonna shake out good.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, comedy, either you get like observational comedy and comedy that is like your Saturday evening entertainment, turn on the terrestrial TV channels and you'll see like your family entertainer, that kind of like an observational comedy, which can be pretty funny. Eddie Izzard's done some excellent
love Eddie
comedy. Is absolutely brilliant. But the older I get, the more I want meaning to come out of the songs I listen to, the comedy I watch, and stuff like that. And so, for me, I want to be getting some chunky political or existential philosophical commentary within this comedy, because then it's all the more meaningful. And so, but the problem is with comedy, it's either observational or you're picking on someone, right? I guess, or an idea, but the ideas that people have, and so therefore, if there are going to be victims to your comedy, you've got to think carefully about who those victims are, and whether it's right to be victimizing those people. When you are thinking up comedy routines, are these things that you think about?
I do a lot of, at least lately, I'm trying to do a lot more stories and about things that, you know, like kids say the darndest things, I guess. And, but yeah, I'm also trying to have an agenda. And, you know, part of, you know, I'm sure as you've experienced being the parent of a kid with, you know, that's on the spectrum or has any kind of special needs, you know, let me back up. When I first started doing comedy, I just wanted to make people laugh. I really didn't care that much about how. I just knew that it made me feel good to make people feel laugh. It made me feel powerful. I'm not an exceptionally like fit person. I've never really been great at sports, but that was kind of like my power was in making people laugh. So when I first started doing comedy, I didn't really care. I just wanted to make people laugh. Then the more I got into comedy, I was like, okay, George Carlin, you know, basically invented this. And he's got a lot to say, and he's doing it in a funny way. So that's what I wanted to do. And I was like, okay, now that's what I'm going to try and do. And I didn't really do it very well. So then, you know, I think that I prioritized like trying to be offensive over being offensive, but also having something to say with it. Now, kind of as I get older, I'm like, okay, I have a thing that I need to say. This is important, not just because it's important to me, but because I think that this is, you know, message, whatever it is that I'm trying to convey. I think that the world will be a better place if more people are considering this thing, you know. So whether I'm going to say that in an offensive way or a clever way, whatever pathway is going to get there is the most important thing for me.
Sorry to interrupt you again, but you just facilitated me thinking, yeah, that's exactly like writing a novel or writing a TV show, which is like the difference between theme and plot. So it's like, what am I trying to say? What's my theme? What am I trying to say? Like, I'm trying to deliver like this theme and that theme and, you know, teach you this or get across this message. Okay, what's the plot going to be that allows me to you know, discuss this theme or to give you this? So that's just like comedy, which is like, right, what do I want to say? Or at least the way that you're talking about doing comedy, which is like, right, what do I want to say? Let's get some jokes that I can tailor to say that.
Exactly. And you know, now that, you know, besides being a godless heathen, you know, my main brand, I guess, is fatherhood. You know, it's kind of hard not to have it be that when you've got 5 kids, you know. So you know, my mission is to try and make the world a better place for them and for kids that are like them. I don't know if we have enough time to go into the direction real quick here, but like you know, with Roe versus Wade being recently overturned, you know, having a kid with special needs, you know, my daughter is 22. Along with Down syndrome comes just a host of other medical issues. She's had a lot of heart surgeries, and a lot of parents that have kids with special needs are very anti-choice because, you know, they think like, well, they're just trying to get rid of, you know, the argument is that people are trying to get rid of people that have Down syndrome and, you know, think of it as like a form of eugenics. What my concern is that if my daughter were to ever become pregnant, it would kill her. She is one, you know, evil person away from becoming pregnant and dying. So I'm very, very against very against forced birth due to that reason. That's my mission. You know, my theme is that I'm trying to get across is that I want the world to be a safer place for my kids and for your kids and for all kids. If we're living in a world where I don't know if you're aware, there was a study. I really wish I'll try and drop the link in the comments for this, but I think it's between 80 and 90% of individuals with mental disabilities like Down syndrome, that kind of thing. Between 80 and 90% are sexually assaulted over the course of their life, which is staggering. And I've seen that reflected in a couple studies. I'm sorry, I didn't have my coffee yet, but knowing that, you know, my kid's never going to live in a group home for many reasons, but chiefly, you know, that's one of the big ones. You know, my kid is one assault away from being murdered by a rapist, and I'm not going to live in a world where that's okay. And I'm not going to let the world be that way.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So it's very much a potentially a political dimension to where you're going with your comedy and making a statement. And I guess, you know, it would be nice if you can if you can make people laugh without being so overtly political.
Yeah, you want to talk about comedy? Let's talk about Roe versus Wade.
Yeah. So you almost want them almost for you to have left the stage by the time they realize where that goes. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I
that's
see
the
what's going on.
challenge.
Yeah, I see. Because when it's so in your face, then you are going to alienate those people who are, pro forced birth. But then, where do you sit on things like taboo subjects? Because taboo is often a very powerful form of a very powerful stimulus for comedy.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, the nature taboo is that really you shouldn't say or think some of these things. But there's that fine line. I don't know.
I think it kind of depends on the topic, like things that are different things are taboo for different cultures or different places, like if I was doing a show in the American South, it would be really challenging for to do any kind of anti-religious messaging in the Bible Belt would be really challenging. And like you said, the challenge is to get off the stage before they get off the stage and into the safe room before you realize that they've been offended or that they've
but before they realize they've just been laughing at God.
Yes, yeah. Which I think my favorite person who does that brilliantly, I think, is Tim Minchin, who brilliant guy. It was one of my favorite artists to introduce people to.
His acceptance speech for an honorary degree, I forget where it was, maybe Melbourne University. Have you ever heard it?
Yes, I've heard it, and I repost it every so often on social media.
Yeah. That's same with me. It's like every few years, I'm like, oh yeah, just remember that this is an absolutely amazing piece of
yes.
Yeah, I'd advise anyone listening, just Google Tim Minchin, graduation speech, and it is just absolutely phenomenal. And his Storm song is a skeptic's anthem, really.
Absolutely.
But so many of his songs are just absolutely brilliant.
Thank You God. I think Thank You God is one of my favorites, but the one I most commonly share with people is the I think it's the Lullaby one. Whenever I find out a friend's having a new baby, I send that song to them.
I have to remind myself of that one. That's a bit of Googling to do later.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, anything else to say on sort of comedy and the process of doing comedy, or whether you're going to get back into it in a way that's meaningful, or?
I think for right now, the way that I'm getting back into it is by writing for OnlySky. I've since I became more aware of Hemant Mehta's stuff and have been listening to his show and gone back on it, I've just really honored to be a part of it. I'm really excited that that this is a thing that I'm getting to do. Hey, there's me. I'm excited to have this opportunity. I don't think that I'll be getting on stage anytime soon, largely because of the 5 kids and other full-time job. And yeah.
So are you on Hemant Mehta's podcast then? Is this something you're doing?
No. I'm just listening to it. I'm just listening to him.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And then I got confused. Well, look, if there's any questions from the live chat going on, any super chats, anything, that would be really appreciated, because we're just wrapping things up. So what I like to do towards the end of my show, is there anything you'd like to sort of talk about? Any projects you're doing? Any life experiences you think will be worth sharing with us?
One real quick thing, I guess, since we touched on my day job and the schizophrenia and other individuals with thought disorders. One thing that, this isn't a funny bit, sorry, but one thing that I've learned about this is, and people that are living with this is, we talked a little bit about bullies earlier, and one thing that I've learned in my day job is just a great admiration for folks who are living with thought disorders. I've worked with people that were kind of bullies, and I've been around people that that I didn't enjoy their company, but for one reason or another I had to be around. But I always was able to leave leave that situation when I clocked off and left my job or left the party that I had to go to or whatever. Being bullied by your own brain 24/7 is a fight that you don't get to walk away from, and probably a topic that I'll write on eventually. But the admiration that I have for the folks that I work with just continues to grow. And if you have anybody in your family or a friend that is struggling with auditory hallucinations or with any kind of psychosis, it can be really frustrating to be around them because you never really they're kind of hard to read. But give that person a little bit of grace. As my wife, that's the thing that I picked up from my wife's religious past that I do like, is giving somebody grace. I've really learned a lot about bravery and about I don't know if this is a word that they use in the UK, but gumption.
Yeah, I would think that'd be more of a UK word. It sounds very UK to me.
It does, I guess, right? That's a topic that I plan on writing on eventually. But just if you know anybody that's like that you have a chance to talk to them and connect with them, it's a really lonely existence to only have yourself in your brain. And if you get a chance to reach out, they're not scary. They might look a little off, but they're really fascinating folks, and they're having to deal with a lot. So that's my little thing that I've been thinking on lately.
Yeah. Well, working as a therapist, of course, you get to experience all sorts of things that we in the neurotypical world or lay people just generally won't, unless they experience it themselves, won't be coming across. And having a window into other people's minds is always fascinating, no matter where they sit on any kind of spectrum, from neurotypical to neuroatypical. And people are fascinated. I always get fascinated with people that just don't think like me. Because all you know is your own brain, and so it's so difficult to understand. Like I've thought about this in terms of homosexuality before, right? Because I'm a heterosexual male, and I thought homosexuality is really fascinating, and it's fascinating because I just can't imagine it because I am not that. And but it can be anything. It's like, this kind of thought process, or you think in this particular way, or someone who's neuroatypical, or someone that can't understand. See, I can understand this. I can black and white understand this. Why can you not understand that? And it's just fascinating.
I've had almost every friend that I have had that is gay. When I've been talking to them about it, I eventually get to the point where they say, "Are you cruising?" Like, no, I'm not. I'm just curious. I'm curious, but not curious. I know. It's my brain's not in that area, but you've got such a different experience than me. I want to know about it. I'm not trying to hook up. Okay, cool. That's what I thought. I just checking.
Yeah, and but it fascinates me. It just things fascinate me when I can't access what you're thinking and the way that you're thinking, such that you get this. I just can't access that because it's not in my toolbox, and therefore that fascinates me. And when you're talking about any kind of neurotypical behavior or thought or cognition, then that's fascinating because my brain doesn't work like that. So tell me about it. Thank you so much to Ricky Johnson. You are a fantastic supporter. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much to James Appleton as well. What a legend. And I mean that in a kind of legend of one that actually exists, not like,
the Yeti
or something, or Yeti. I went straight to the Bible. You went to like much more interesting, like big hairy creatures.
That's my next article, actually. It's the Yeti Messiah, I think, is going to be my next.
Well, I look forward to it, and please check out what he made. I mean, there's only one article so far from Casey on OnlySky, but keep checking it out. There's so much variety on OnlySky. It's such a great home, a great team to be a part of. So that's all good. Well, look, Casey, before we go, I have to give you my my quick fire questions.
Bring it.
You just got to give me your answers without too much thought. What's your favorite non-fiction book? Non-fiction.
Nonfiction. I'm gonna go with the new Jim Crow.
By whom?
I would have to look it up.
Yeah, the new Jim Crow. So I presume that's to do with sort of race laws and
Yes.
blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
Okay, the new Jim Crow. Thank you. What's your favorite fiction book?
The Chronicles from Dragonlance. It's a trilogy.
Oh my goodness, right. So goodness me, like Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. So now when I was at school, boarding school, at the age of like must have been 12, 11, don't know. Would have been in the mid 80s. The Dragonlance Chronicles were the thing. They were the book.
They're still the thing.
Blew up, like, and suddenly fantasy was back. You know, you had your Lord of the Rings, but this was like the thing. And there were 9 books in the series eventually, and there's
like 250 books in the series.
Is there really now? Well, they were.
I've read about 100 of them.
They're originally the 9 of
yes.
Like there was a trilogy, and a trilogy of trilogies, and
there's a new one coming out next month.
So there you go. So that was my childhood. Was I won't geek out on that. I won't subject the audience any more than is absolutely necessary. But I could
Great
easily
book.
geek out on that. Okay, favorite TV show, not movie.
TV, The Tick.
Okay, cool. Never seen that, but yep.
There's a cartoon and there's one animated series and two live action. They're all brilliant.
Yeah. Okay, good. Favorite movie?
Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh, classic. I might have to show that to my boys actually.
You definitely should.
A bit of Kurt Russell. Okay. So you're just about to be executed for being too liberal, and you're just like this Orwellian like society that we live in. You are next, so you're going to be. But
okay.
Just before you're executed, you are granted your last supper. What would you have on the menu?
Okay, I'm going to say this.
Goodness me, there's a lot of thought.
My wife's awesome. The thing is that my wife's an awesome cook. So I'm trying to decide which one of.
She's not listening. You're not just trying to get brownie points.
No. She's. We've got 4 kids in the house right now. She doesn't have time to listen to anything. And a dog. The chickens are still outside, to my knowledge. I'm going to go with my wife's enchiladas.
Okay, good. Well done. You have earned some brownie points. So if you were to get a super power, like a superhero power, what would it be?
Telekinesis.
So you would be able to
move things with my mind. Yeah.
Why is that?
I'm lazy. I don't like to exercise, and pretty much every other you could, depending on the limitations of it, you can make yourself fly. So you already have you get flight. You don't even have to pick that as a power. You get that plus other things.
Right, hang on. So with telekinesis, do you get to move the world but keep so thereby fly? I'm going to move the planet but keep me where I am.
No, I'm going to move myself. I'm going to move myself.
Yeah. Oh my god, I'm so dense. Why did I go there? Why am I that thick?
I don't. Well, I guess you could do it that way, but
that's why I don't invent things, right? Because like someone will come along and say, "Why have you invented that?" When this would do the trick, but it's like 15 times. Yeah,
I just move myself with my mind. Yeah, or if you're in battle against somebody else with a superpower, I'm hard pressed to find a superpower. Like if somebody's got super strength, you just have to lift them like 3 feet off the ground and just let them hover there. And unless they're holding something they can throw at you, you just kind of wait till they're tired, and then or they're bored. Like eventually they're going to get hungry or have to poop, and you can poop right there and I'll hold it, or you can just I'll let you down. You can go to the bathroom, but don't beat me up.
Yep, fair cop.
No, I'm not bringing you chicken nuggets. So you have to calm down first.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. So if you could see a band or artist or musical setup live that you've never seen before, dead or alive, you've never seen them before, who would you see?
I have never seen Tool, and they're one of my favorites. I kind of like to see them. Probably Tool, because most of my favorites I've seen.
You're just like ticking all the like liberal, D&D, nerd, metal.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Tattoos somewhere here.
Yeah, there you go. Tattoos of a superhero. Like, yeah, come on. Okay. So favorite comedian?
Right now, I'd probably Tim Minchin, honestly, right now.
Fair enough. Yeah. I have no truck with that. And final question is: you are just about to have your face eaten off by the zombies from. This is where I get to spam again from my fiction series, Survival of the Fittest, Metamorphosis, and Adaptation. The second one. So the zombies in this are about to bite your face off. You have time. Luckily, you're a prepper and you've got a bunker ready, and you are able to just take down 3 people with you, dead or alive, randomly, that just happen to be hanging out nearby. Can't be your friends or family. Who would you take to hang out in a bunker for a month?
For a month, Steve Martin.
Nice, good entertainment.
Yeah, I feel like how much. Are they fast? Okay, just hanging out in the bunker. I don't have to worry about escaping. So I've got all my basic needs are met, right?
Yeah. Just 3 people you want to spend a month.
I'm gonna go with Gordon Ramsay, but
just for the swearing and the anger.
No, for the cooking, because I've got like beans and rice and shit. You know, I just want him to make it nice. You know, I'm good. And do we say dead or alive?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Bill O'Reilly, because I'm gonna need to exercise, and I feel like kicking the shit out of him for a month would probably I don't think it would get old.
Is Bill O'Reilly still up there? Is Tucker Carlson not the new Bill O'Reilly?
Ah, shit, you're right, Tucker. I'll go Tucker. You're right, Tucker. I feel like Tucker.
I don't want to out American you here. But
no. Well, I guess hold on. I might be going back to Bill because I feel like Tucker would cry a lot, and Bill would have like some he would like not want to like show his you know like I can take it, but I feel like Tucker would just cry. Ah, damn it, that's hard. Nah, yeah, I think you're right. I think I'm gonna go Tucker.
Yeah, fair enough. Well,
so
interesting.
Can I throw him out the airlock too?
Sorry.
Can I throw him out of the airlock when we're done beating him up?
Yeah, you can do what you can feed into the zombies if you like. That's fine. Not a problem.
Yeah.
Before, during, or after. And you have a fan, or at least you have been validated, Ricky Johnson. Yes, I love Tool. I was going to make some Tool joke there, but I'm not going to because it's rubbish. And I'm not a comedian, evidently, and you are. So. Thank you so much for the time that you have dedicated to this. I appreciate everything you've said. It's been an interesting conversation. We've covered a number of different topic areas. I appreciate having the sound of roosters in the background. I mean, there's a cock joke to be had there, but just for
and a twin joke.
It's just all of the above. But I will refrain because I am very
you're classy.
I am classy, thank you. Good at self-regulation, and I appreciate your dog as well. And so thank you for bringing your life into our lives.
Where can I get your books at?
But you can get my books at anywhere you like, mate. Well, not anywhere. Like if you go into the butchers,
McDonald's.
Big Mac and fries, and
I wanted to, and I want fries with it.
Yeah, any good bookstore. So yeah, no, please do. Thank you. And thank you for everyone for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure. And anytime you want to come on and test out any new gags or tell us about the family that you have, or the people in therapy that you might want to just, I don't know, express interest over. Although, what is it, not patient child, parent, no, patient doctor relationship,
Privacy stuff.
Privacy. Thank you. This is my multiple sclerosis brain just falls apart. Anyway, thank you so much. You take care. It's been a pleasure. And as to everyone else in the audience, always remember, well, first of all, like, subscribe, and do all that kind of YouTube stuff that other YouTubers say a lot. Just do that. I don't have like subscribe and bells and stuff like that. Just whatever. But it'll be nice if you press things that help.
We're a respectable bunch.
Yeah. And
we don't need fancy bells and whistles.
Yeah, there's and as ever, question everything, particularly yourselves. Please make sure you do that. Anyway, guys, it's been a pleasure. Pleasure was all yours. Toodle pips.